22 veterans take their lives every day. PTSD, isolation, and lack of support leave them feeling lost and alone. The transition from military life to civilian life is often marked by a dissonance between their military experiences, accomplishments, and the civilian world, leading to a sense of isolation, confusion, and in many cases, despair. Oftentimes, resources are hard to access for people in rural areas. Wait times and paperwork make healthcare difficult to navigate, mental health care is stigmatized, and familial support networks can be strained by a lack of shared experiences. All stories are unique to each veteran's experiences, but many come down to an important element: community. It is critical to supporting men and women as they transition from military life to civilian life.
A little while ago, I got a call from James Greer inviting me to participate in a ride in June from Casper, Wyoming to Milwaukee, Wisconsin along Highway 20, the newly dedicated Medal of Honor highway, to distribute funds to different nonprofit organizations that benefit U.S. veterans. I'll let James explain this a little better than I can.
My name is James Greer. I'm the founder and CEO of Ride for Veterans. I am a veteran myself. I served in the Gulf War. Would have been Operation Desert Storm, Desert Shield, combat veteran. I established Ride for Veterans in 2021. I wanted to raise money and awareness of the veteran suicide issue in the United States and to help get other people involved. This year's ride, I was approached by an individual who wanted to really blow it up. So I agreed, and it kind of expanded into a lot of money. So at that point, I started forming a board, and it was brought up under the board meeting that if I wanted to help organizations, then why don't we go across the Medal of Honor highway and show respect and give money away on the way. Start visiting some of these organizations that are putting that money in the hands of those veterans in some of those forgotten places in the plains.
When we set out from Casper, Wyoming, and I met the group that we'd be riding with for the next 4 days, I was intimidated. I've gotten to help raise funds for different programs that assist veterans in the Portland, Oregon area, but as a civilian who has never served in the military, it can sometimes feel daunting to try and hold a conversation with a veteran who has experienced things you can't even imagine. There's a little bit of a hurdle there. How do you navigate asking questions without feeling like you're pushing personal boundaries? How do you know what you can and should not ask about? I felt out of place, like an intruder who had stumbled into their group. But we set out on our first day on the road together across the plains. If there's one thing that brings people together, though, it's food. After a day of riding together, we ended the day at the Vets Club in Valentine, Nebraska, where they kindly greeted us with burgers and hot dogs. Sitting down and sharing a meal and listening to the group banter definitely settled some of my nerves, so I set up my tent for the night, looking forward to the next day's ride with my new friends. Good morning, beautiful people, from day 2 of Ride for Veterans 2024. We're here in Valentine, Nebraska. The sun is coming up. I gotta get all my stuff packed up because we're gonna do Pledge Allegiance at 7:30 a.m. And so I have exactly 40 minutes to get my stuff packed and ready. It was really, really warm yesterday, so hopefully the weather is just a little bit nicer today. Anyway, I gotta get my stuff packed up. While I was packing up, one of my newly made friends brought me food. It made my whole day. She was so kind and checked on me to make sure that I was fed and stayed hydrated for the whole trip. She made me feel like I was truly a part of the group instead of an outsider taking along for the ride. I'm sure now you're thinking, what does motorcycle riding have to do with raising funds to support veterans and hopefully work to decrease the amount that we lose every day?
I was at work one day and I happened to be passing by my wife's work, and I decided I would stop by and see if I could get some lunch money. And she showed me an article that was done by the Psychology Research Institute, and it was from 2016. And she asked me if I had ever heard of this before, and had me sit down in the office and read the article. In that article, it explained that 22 veterans a day in the United States of America commit suicide. And as I read, I was kind of stunned that number was that high. And I kept reading, it said over 70% of those are over the age of 50, which meant those are the people I fought in combat with. Those are my brothers in arms. So it was a pretty solemn moment for me. It hit me pretty hard, knowing that the same people that I was in foxholes with are now taking their own lives. And we fought so hard to survive that war together, and now they're just willfully giving it up. I told my wife that I wanted to do something to raise recognition for that and to get other people to realize that I'd been around the military most of my life now, even though I'm a civilian, but I worked with the military, and I didn't know. And I told my wife that I was going to ride a dirt bike to the Arctic Circle and back, and I was going to give myself 22 days to do it. Now, I probably should have looked at how far it was before I made that commitment, but I'd already opened my mouth when I said it, so then I had to do it. And my wife said, you know, if you're going to do this, you're going to go do it. I understand you have to do this. If you're going to do that, then you might as well do it for the vets. Do something to give back to them, not just go out there and put yourself in harm's way for no reason. And a couple other people found out what I was doing and they wanted to be a part of it. So they said, we'll sponsor you. So I started researching organizations that I didn't know existed, like Mission 22, Valhalla Project, things like that, okay? Some American Legion posts, Wisconsin Hero Outdoors, and a few of the others. And I started researching those, and I looked into how much money actually made it in the hands of the vet. I decided that any money that I raised, you had to be in a 95, what I call a 95 percentile. So 95 cents on every dollar that you receive must end up in the hands of a veteran. Paying an electric bill, okay? Paying a doctor bill, buying them gas, helping them get an automobile, something that's helping that veteran. I decided July 1 I was gonna do it, and I took off on July 1. And I had no idea what I was getting into. It was brutal. And I wanted all the money I could possibly get in the hands of the vets, so I took a tent and a sleeping bag from Walmart. It was a brutal trip. I've learned a lot from that trip, okay? I found a lot more than I've lost, if you will. And I made the trip in 18 and a half days. I raised well over $50,000 for veterans, and I reached over 1.5 million people on that trip. I had no idea that what I was doing was so stupid. Everybody was interested, right? And that led to other things, and that's what brought me here today, and that's why the organization that I created is out of my control, if you will. It has exploded, and I'm glad to see that because it's helping so many people. We have a few vets that are on this ride today that have been riding with us across the Medal of Honor Highway that have benefited from my organization. I would never tell anyone who they are, but they're there because they benefited from my organization that I created 3 years ago with my wife.
At the end of our ride on day 2, we went to the Freedom Park Interpretive Center. The center hosts educational displays and interviews from veterans that cover military life through deployment, redeployment, and their reintegration into society.
Veterans returning to civilian life often encounter a range of obstacles that hinder their smooth reintegration. One of the most significant challenges is the psychological toll of combat and military service. Many veterans experience post-traumatic stress disorder, also known as PTSD, a debilitating condition characterized by flashbacks, nightmares, anxiety, and depression. The transition back to a peaceful environment can be jarring, triggering these symptoms and making it difficult to adjust to everyday life.
I think it's important that we understand that when soldiers come back, whether it be male or female, okay, when those soldiers come back and they try to transition back into the civilian life, they're losing a lot. They're giving up a lot. They're giving away their identities, okay? They're giving away all their accomplishments that they've ever had, everything that they've tried to accomplish in their life. They're walking away from it when they take that uniform off.
My name's Esther Blair. I'm an Army veteran, Women's Army Corps, then the Army, and then National Guard for a while. My parents were immigrants, political refugees. I came out in 1961 when I was 5, and my father literally paid for a ransom to bring me out, and that's no joke. And so for this country giving my parents the opportunity to live, first of all, to raise a family and to make a life for themselves, I felt that I needed to give back something. When I got out in 1981, okay, I had to think about that. In 1981, when I got out, I had 2 young kids. I was working full-time with the National Guard in Georgia, and my mother got sick, and I basically walked away from everything. I had, at that point, was divorced, and I had moved back to California to, help my youngest sister out, who was still at home. And in my case, it was basically dive in and go for it. The programs weren't in place. There was absolutely nothing in place for female veterans. So for me, it was a figure out on as you go along type deal. What we've done between what we do here with this ride and what we've done in the past is we don't want these soldiers, these current GWAT, and the older ones, to go through what we went through back when we came back, where there was no transition period. Everything, you just suck it up, went right back to civilian life.
Beyond the psychological scars, veterans also grapple with the loss of camaraderie and purpose that define their military service. The structured environment of the military, where every action is driven by a clear mission, contrasts sharply with the relative ambiguity and individualism of civilian life. This lack of structure can lead to feelings of disorientation and purposelessness, leaving veterans struggling to find their place in a society they no longer fully understand.
It's Tammy Sawyer. I am the current president of Wisconsin Hero Outdoors here in Delafield, Wisconsin. We work with veterans, first responders, and their families, which is very important. And we get them outside doing outdoor activities such as fishing or hiking, snowshoeing, gardening, whatever it may be, as a form of suicide prevention. A lot of veterans move to rural areas because they want that peace and quiet. They think they want that alone time. And quite often it's too much and they need a resource to reach out to and have someone to lean on. And I think American Legions quite often are a great opportunity for them to do that. There's maybe the wrong conception of American Legions in certain areas, but you find the right people and they're going to make a difference in your life. They talk about 22 veterans a day who take their lives, die of suicide. That number is actually higher. because they don't count drug or alcohol overdoses, nor do they count vehicular accidents. And veterans are 1.5 times more likely to take their lives than civilians. I don't mean to be a downer, but those are not numbers that we really talk about. It's kind of faux pas, and I think this country, we need to step it up.
Visiting the Siouxland Freedom Park and reading all the first-hand accounts of veterans transitioning from service to civilian life gave me a lot to think about as we set up camp at the end of day 2. By the morning of day 3, I felt well and truly adopted by this incredible group because Esther brought me chai. It was amazing and I felt so special. And we geared up and hit the road.
Community support plays an important role in easing the transition for veterans from active duty back into civilian life. Veterans who feel connected to their communities and have access to resources tailored to their needs tend to have a smoother transition into civilian life. They also tend to have more feelings of fulfillment in their lives as they connect with people and find purpose. Community-based programs that offer counseling, job training, and social support can provide a lifeline for veterans struggling to find their footing.
So I'm Benjamin Jarvis, combat veteran. I served on active duty with the regular Army till about 2002, and then had about a year break in service before I came back on active duty with the Wisconsin Army National Guard. 6 tours overseas, which included Korea, Germany, Iraq twice, Kosovo twice. The transition at first, right, when I was getting ready to retire, it was, man, this is over. You were kind of excited about it. And it was after I retired that I realized, man, there was a lot of my identity that was tied to that uniform. Post-military at times has been difficult. And I got into motorcycling and started to realize that there was a lot of similarities in motorcycling as with the military when it comes to brotherhood, sisterhood, camaraderie, people you can go to talk to, things like that, and kind of started getting me out more. I kind of started to isolate and battle with depression and anxiety, but motorcycling, really got me out, in a time where, I didn't know if I was gonna, make it or not, and so, yeah, it's been a rocky transition, but it's definitely becoming smoother. As it pertains to the resources that are there for veterans, you have your local VAs within those areas, but you can also look past, the VA, right? There's certain things the VA can provide you, but then there's these supplemental organizations that can help you find that thing that's going to keep you moving forward. For some, it's the outdoors. For some, it's motorcycling. For some, it's volunteerism and things, and or hunting. With the Hunting for Heroes. So I can't encourage people enough to, get in touch with your, county veteran service officer, or your local VFW, or your American Legion, or your VA, and find out, what those resources are.
Success stories with Wisconsin Hero Outdoors, there are actually quite a few, which is fantastic. I've seen it when people come to an event and in the very first time they come, they might not look you in the eye and they might just keep their head down low and eat their lunch and head out. But then after the second or third time, now they're actually taking part of what we're doing and they're sharing their stories and they're laughing and they're seeking help from other veterans. That's one of the beauties of what we do. There's no pressure. Just come as you are and be who you are.
After 4 days together crossing the Midwest, stopping at various nonprofits, VFWs, and American Legion outposts, we were received at the Wisconsin Harley-Davidson dealership. We were able to interact with people and share what we were doing and why before we were escorted to the Harley-Davidson Museum in the heart of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Standing there felt so surreal, realizing that this was my last day with the incredible individuals that I had spent the better part of a week with. The intimidation I felt on the first day had been swept aside by feelings of camaraderie as we had shared in the struggle of crossing the Midwest in heavy wind gusts and record temperatures. I already started to miss them before we had even said goodbye. While James and Ben were sharing their story with the audience, I was reflecting on the conversations I got to have with these people, particularly focusing on what I could do as a civilian to support our veterans.
Do what you can do. Volunteer, help out, reach out. We're not talking Girl Scout cookies and we're not talking, peanuts for the Boy Scouts. We're talking real life needs. If you have a service organization in your community, whether you belong to it or not, support them, whether it's, going out and holding a flag during an event or going to a meal that they're offering, because if generally if they do a fundraiser, it's for something like this. So support your VSOs, support your soldiers and don't leave out the older veterans. Knock on their door, shake their hand. In the Legion, we call it a buddy check. It's okay to talk to the old geezers once in a while.